Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz. Here on a Friday night, we're about 40 minutes from the Friday night first bounce. As always, try to get on here to talk about the last changes for Sunday, a couple relevant ones that have come through, but as always, update my team, any last minute questions you guys have. And I have been a little bit slack with this lately, but our daily fantasy Friday night draft stars. So I'm going to kick into that straight away, and then we can get into your super coach questions and everything else that's going on there. I think that's the best way to do it. As always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular YouTube, Spotify. Get in touch with us via X, Supercoach Insider 100, or for me directly, Swizz26. All right, we'll kick off, as I said, the draft stars. I do apologise for being a little bit slack here. For me tonight, I think this is all about Geelong. Really not loving the D's in this game. Watched them live the last 2 weeks, and geez, they were poor. And the Cats on the rebound, there's no team that you want to be playing away than Geelong when they're on the rebound. So I think it is massively their night. I've actually was just working on this team a moment ago, and I got the perfect $0 team. So I was pretty happy with that. So I'm going to go, as much as I would like Myers, I think he goes really well at home, and his form in this format's been fairly good, like the 112, the 94, and I can see him going really well. So there might be maybe a change here or a couple other lineups that I could do to make that work. But Manor comes back in, so I'm going to go him. Actually, before I even say that, the subs in this game as well, as always, Geelong making a late change. So as expected, Stanley does come in and going straight into the ruck, which does drop. And I'm just trying to find where he's actually named, because Blissarves has come out. DeConning, yep, just gone straight to the back line. O'Connor is the sub. And then for the D, Spargo is the sub tonight. But Geelong, as always, doing what they do each week and making a late change. I think it's about 26 weeks in a row or something like that. So, yes, Manor, and I'm going the other small forward in Stengel. As I said, probably the more cash I'd try to get up to Myers, but just the way I'm trying to work this team. And as I said, there's not a lot of Melbourne happening in here. I'm bringing in Bailey Smith. I'm expecting him to have a big one. So I'm going to the two Geelong players in the engine room. That's Max Holmes and Bailey Smith. I think, Bailey Smith had the opportunity to smash a big Supercoach score last week, but we do know he absolutely smashed it from a fantasy part. So I'm going to have both of them in here. The only D I'm going to have is young Langford. I thought he was really good last week. That bigger body, I think they keep giving him opportunities. I'd probably prefer somebody who's a bit more of a experienced guy, but look what happened in the drubbing last week, and he was pretty good. That's value there for a guy who's 8,000 because of that sub-affected score. So I'm going to throw Langford in there. And the other midfielder, I'm going to go the one that also plays on the other wing, and that's Oliver Dempsey. You could potentially look at a Windsor who does spend a little bit of time through the back, but a 55 in his first game, a little bit underwhelming. Dempsey, there are a couple of poorer games there, but I think he'll be trying to make amends, especially on that Geelong track tonight. So I'm picking him. The defenders, I kind of always want like one of each on these sides. So for Melbourne, the obvious ones, Christian Salem. Poor game last week, but this guy, if they're going to get any ball out of halfback, they're going to go through him. Rivers is not a bad call. Maybe the way to get Myers is to go down to like a Jake Bowie. And I might even play around with that one in a second just to see if we go, because he's been super consistent in here. But for now, I'm going to go Salem. But I think either Salem or Bowie kind of works. And then I'm going to go Jack Bowes for Geelong as their sort of player. I think going up to, say, Stewart's just too expensive, and it's just such a risk. Don't mind the Humphreys or the Zach Guthrie pick there if you can free up the money. And that leaves us with exactly 9,580. And for his first game, maybe his own game for the year, Reece Stanley comes in. Max Gorn's just too expensive for this. And the problem is, because they've got the other tools, I don't really want to pick Neil up against, say, a May. DeConning playing backline, so I think that works for me. So that is the lineup I'm going in draft stars. As I said, they might be able to, if we go, let's see what we do if Salem becomes Bowie for this and how much cash that we can get. Can we get Manor up to Myers? Because that's probably the other one which I quite like. So if we rack off Manor, oh, yes, we do get Myers, okay. And we still have 330 remaining. So that's actually not a little move there in the midfield for those people who do play this format. I'm just trying to see if there's anybody else that we can magically get up to because we have that money. Probably not. So I'm going to go that. Gamble responsibly because that is my paid one. There is obviously free games, and I keep saying that. You can definitely look at playing this because you do have a free option. All right, I'll get up my Supercoach and answer some of these last minute questions as we are 35 minutes down to bounce time now. And, I do appreciate everybody who's already been jumping on. Try to do this pretty consistently now. All right, so the first thing you'll see I've got up there, I haven't even wasted any time. I already had this set up ready to go tonight. That is Nick Dacos. If I probably move the screen, you might see it. We've not, with my head in the way, but there's Nick Dacos, and he scored last night, which was looking really poor. So he scored a 94, but he was at 20 at halftime. So that obviously was looking really bad. So thought I'd put up his projection straight off. So he was 602, looking like he was going to drop a ton of cash, but that puts him down another 16K, break even of 124 and 585. So if he's obviously he can easily score 124. The problem is his next game, he's going to cop that Jordan tag. And as we talked about, Hewitt does a good job. I was big on that last night to those people who wanted to vice captain him. It's just not the game. Hewitt, outside of that last goal that he kicked a couple of games ago against him where he got that 150, he has a really poor record, and that 150 there against Hewitt, like it's a 101. The previous game was 100. So he does do a really good job on him, and Hewitt himself found so much of the ball. So it wasn't a hard tag, but he does play him quite well. And maybe Dacos is not 100%, but that is a good matchup. And then next week he does get Jordan. Last time he got Jordan, it was 66. We know what the score was obviously against Bedford earlier in the year, which was also 66. So I think that projection, we know Dacos is good enough, but the fact that, it's you can see Jordan doing a job, even if we kind of say it's an 80, all of a sudden we're talking about Dacos, even if he starts to rebound, could get as cheap as the 550 there. So have a bit of a plan. We always sit there and say Anzac Day is the one where you want to start planning around Dacos. So a Dacos about that 550 in your plans. I think that's probably the way to go. Still some, it's not like they've got the easiest draw coming up, but it is Dacos. He's one of the best players in the comp, and we just know what he kind of does up against the Bombers every year in Anzac Day. So, I think that needs to be in the back of our mind. So I thought I'd throw that one up before we get into any questions, because it is going to be something that I think are in the back of people's minds. The other one was, if you haven't caught up with the news, Dan Houston got 2 weeks. Don't think he's going to appeal that. That's going to be a tough one to get off. So another 2 weeks without him. Perryman did actually look good for those people who have held on to him, but the conditions did suit. It was such a poor game and very defensive game last night. So I think Collingwood would end up laying like 90 tackles or something like that. So it was pretty easy there for them to get the ball. In regards to my trades, there's 2 of them done so far, and obviously fixed up the Geelong ones because we've got the Geelong game tonight, and for whatever reason that doesn't want to load now. But Nevitt's come out of my side, and so is Jaden Short. So far it is Bailey Smith has come in to my forward line, and I have got and Moraes. So I was looking at potentially trading Rosie. I've held now because some of the outs, and you'll see there Hewitt is there, and I've got the cash to go up to either Marriage or Humphrey. I've had Marriage in pretty well for the pretty well 48 hours now, and the reason for that is I've looked at this West Coast side, and I was sort of tweeting. I was putting it in a few groups that I'm in, and the fact that you look at this West Coast side compared to the 2022 top-up side when they had all those COVIDs in, and it's really there's not a huge amount of difference. Like if you actually kind of look through both sides, it probably shows how bad, well, not maybe bad, but inexperienced the West Coast side is this week. So like in their top-up side, they still had guys like Darling, Ryan, Willie Rioli, Kelly, McGovern, Witherden, Hearn, Duggan. Bailey Williams was their ruck that day. So Luke Shuey was playing, so they did still have some experienced guys. You kind of have a look at their experienced guys this week. Well, Oscar Allen, you'd expect him to kind of bounce back, but wearing a Hawthorn jumper to a press conference where you're saying you're not leaving to Hawthorn, well, okay, it was a West Coast jumper, but it was brown and gold. Jamie Cripps has played a lot of footy, but he's still playing up forward for them. You got the midfield of sort of Hunt, Graham, Duggan still on this side. The back line outside of sort of Baker, there's not much of experience there. Maybe Cole. How many games has actually Cole played? It's not a huge amount. Harley Reid's obviously a young guy. Bailey Williams still the ruck, and then Kelly, and then it's all kids on the pine. So that West Coast side that's playing Sunday versus the West Coast side that played as the top up match through COVID. It'd be an interesting match how they'd go up against each other. So I think the Giants are going to dominate. I think the Giants are going to obviously have a lot of shots on goal. At the moment, GWS are kicking about 50% accuracy. So wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those games where GWS go around and kick like 25 goals, 20 or something. And Marriage, if he's taking the majority of kickouts, will have an absolute monopoly down there. Looking at sort of the way they've gone, they've brought in Brock to play against Hogan. Good luck there, young Sandy Brock. You would expect maybe Marriage goes to Cadman, and Jimby probably goes to Stringer, though they could put Cole or Howe on Stringer as well. So maybe they try to put one of them on Cadman and free Marriage up a little bit, just so he can sort of play a little bit of that intercepting McGovern role. But you just look at those sides, and I think it's going to be an absolute thrashing. If your Brisbane or your VC hasn't worked out and you've got a GWS player, I think putting the captain on one of them is not a bad idea at all, especially if you've got the Finn Callahan, because it's sort of hard to see how they're going to kind of match up against them. The only problem is Callahan is named on the wing at the moment, so a little bit concerned. But I thought sometimes you take these lineups as a grain of salt, and maybe Kelly still comes out and plays wing. So that's what's happening for me. I still like Bailey Humphrey, but he had that 4-5 game stretch in his debut year, so he does show that he can play that role. I do think he's going to get an uptick of CBAs in one of the games coming up, either against North or Richmond, probably the Richmond game. But I do have a little bit of concerns to the fact that he is reliant on the fact that he does have Flanders, he does have Tuke, and sort of what that balance is. And he can't play Melbourne and West Coast every week, where if West Coast are going to be this bad over the next sort of 2, 3, 4 weeks, Marriage should see enough ball that I think from the on-field points part of view, but they might make enough. They're probably similar cash anyway. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that kind of happens. So that's the way I'm going there. And I did think about the idea of trading out still, maybe say Rosie, so I could free up that cash to go get Clark next week. I'm just going to keep Rosie for one more week and have a look at how that sort of goes with Butters back in. But he is like, bit of a on the chopping block here, because if things go bad, he might, that might be the end of him in my side. But we'll just sort of see how that plays out. I think, up against St Kilda now, missing Jack Steele, so he's pulled out again. There's a big chance for the captain to lead a big rebound, and surely they're going to be absolutely getting a big kick up the butt after their performance against the Bombers last week. He's the captain. He's got to lead from the front. So I'll back Rosie in. My side looks better this week from a points on field, and then we'll go from there. But wouldn't be surprised if Humphrey then comes and burns me. Enough from me, guys. Let's get into you guys. All right, Ricky, thanks for jumping on as always, mate. Hey, Swizz, thanks, guys. Thanks to Kev as well. Beautiful. Thoughts on Stanley being late in? Yeah, so I just said that. Stanley is being a late in. Does this make Gawn a good no? I was slightly considering moving the VC to Gawn if it was just going to be SDK up against him. This is not good. Like Geelong have said this from Dave Dott, and this was always the worry about SDK for this round. I think SDK comes back and probably beats the ruck next week, but they were always going to play Stanley. It's pretty well the only reason Stanley was kept on the list, I think, outside the fact that he was part of that meeting to try to get Rowell down, but he's that big-bodied sort of lamb to the slaughter to play that defensive role on Gawn. I think Gawn's still should do reasonably well, but Stanley isn't there as a defensive ruckman, and they'll rotate the rucks through. And I think, probably Gawn, maybe best case might be a 120. It's not going to still be fine, but it's not what Stanley will play him quite well. He's an experienced guy. So, I don't like that VC now. anymore. Maverick, hey, mate, thanks for jumping on. Michael, thank you for sending a few messages today. Good chatting there. Best of luck tonight, yeah, mate. With Hasty name, I know, how good's that? Should I reverse trade and keep him even if he ends up stub and trade either Hewitt or Nevitt? I think, yeah, either Hewitt or Nevitt, especially Nevitt, because it's weird. This is Geelong in a nutshell. Nevitt out injured, could be who knows amount of time, hasn't played in the VFL. But hey, let's name him as the emergency who could come late in. Like, probably comes back next week or probably misses 2 weeks. Like, Geelong, this is one of the reasons why I'm not picking Closeley. I really like the look of him. Gets more of an opportunity. Probably goes really well. But can I trust Scott not to make him sub next week? He could come out and get 15, 20 touches and still be made sub. Like, I just don't trust Geelong. They make late changes all the time. They change their sub. They change everything. It's really hard to kind of get a read, and it's really frustrating, obviously, for us owners. So, it is a frustrating. And what's his injury? Is that foot or is that platania fascia? It's these things, and we've seen other players get this, and then they miss 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It might be on the light side and never plays next week, but it's frustrating because he could easily do that. But another part, as I said, if it's multiple weeks, then you just get frustrated because you could have probably traded him over another guy. If you've probably got the option between those two, maybe it's Hewitt because Hewitt is injured as well. Looking at that West Coast side, as I opened up with, they should have been. If Hewitt was even half fit, he'd be in that side. So if you've got the option, go there. Does make it easier to hold, obviously, Lindsay now and have a look. Perfect world, if you could hold Nevitt and Lindsay and have a look at them. But I don't think a lot of us are in that situation. In what order do you rank Marriage, Humphrey, Bison, Moraes? Probably in that order. So a lot of people have been asking me this. Like, as I said, I really like Humphrey. The hard thing is on any given week. So would not surprise me this week he plays more forward. Like, I ignore the teams and the fact that he's played at full forward this week because he'll swap up with Flanders. It's just like, obviously it's a harder matchup, more points potentially going to other players. When the whips get cracking this week, and if the game's close, who are they going to really have in there? It's probably Rao, Anderson, Took, and then Flanders. But as I said, because they've got then the 2 games on the road, it's most likely that Richmond game in particular, Humphrey will give a massive chop out, especially to say a Took. And you can see him having the upswing there. So wouldn't surprise me at all if Humphrey only goes sort of 70 this week. And then North Melbourne could go well, but North Melbourne still, for their flaws, they've got a really good midfield. They've got options through there. So it's not the easiest clash. Like, no, they're not the easy beats like they once were. Even like up against the Crows last week, I thought, and I agree with a few people have said this in the media, that Clarko was probably out-coached. But I think, they had opportunities to stay further in that game, but it wasn't from what their midfield was doing. So it's not an easy matchup there. But obviously the Richmond game after that, wouldn't surprise me if Humphrey goes in there and scores like a 120, 130 and gets another uptick and he gets that cash going. So I think he's still a fine choice, no problems. Marriage, it's always with these defenders, it's dependent. But, when you take somebody off McGovern, who, what he averaged last year is like in the top 6 defenders for a reason. You take all those points out, and he was the guy in the preseason. They're already training up to be that support and maybe the next guy in there, because obviously we know McGovern's aging, and the week where they both play together and they both shared the kick outs, really annoyed that they put him sub first week, because if they didn't have him sub, I was seriously looking at him. I had Hutchinson in my team. I was willing to swing to Marriage if he was sort of named, and then they named him sub, and it was just such an awful killer because, I was watching that roll through preseason. I was pretty hot on him. I can't remember if I wrote about him in the article. I feel like he might have been on my list or the short list, might have taken him out, but so I do like Marriage. Bias, the only issue with Bias is the amount of Swans players that could be coming back, but it's funny, a week is a long time in footy because I think people who might have not seen that game, he was the match winner against Freo. He took the game on. He did so many great things. That has bought him some time. The only problem is if they do have all these guys out, who gets sort of squeezed out? Patton's form in the VFL was awesome too. So I think as long as Bice is playing well, he keeps his spot. The worry is if he has one poor, I don't think it's a one poor game, but if it's a couple poor games or even average games with players coming back, maybe then, he gets dropped back for a sub or he gets missed out. But I know they really like him. Obviously had him doing some kickouts in preseason. They've got the confidence of him taking on the game. So I like him. Murray's fine. Like the fact that he's still named with all the Port players in, a rookie that slid down further than what he should have. I really was hoping Richmond were going to pick him because at least he's playing outside, doesn't rely on the CBAs. So I think you've got the order right, but it wouldn't surprise. I think they're all decent choices, and if you had 4 trades this week, you could easily go and get all 4 of them. I don't think that's a wrong thing, and I've really debated about if I had another option, I'd probably try to get Humphrey over Murray's. But Murray's probably makes the exact same cash because obviously he's cheaper and doesn't have to do as much for it. So I think he's still fine. I don't really like Cheese. 3rd week in a row for Geelong. Yeah. And this was the thing. How many weeks last year? Like they just do it all the time. Like Chris Scott's annoying for us, but he does what's best for his team. And, he plays the mind games, the funny buggers. And, that's what they're about. It's like a lot of criticism about Sam Mitchell this week, about the way he goes and targets players. We might not like as some people's footy. Obviously, the West Coast supporters hate it because obviously they got Barras in last year, trying to get Oscar Allen, surely talking to Harley Reid. But in the end of the day, he's got to do what's best for his club and his members. And if you're a Hawk supporter, you're not complaining. If you're a Geelong supporter, you're not complaining. But as a Supercoach community, because we are neutral, there's obviously whatever amount of the 170,000 Supercoach points, and let's just say 140,000 of them are serious super coaches. Probably, even if it's 10%, maybe 14,000 are Geelong supporters, they probably can get over it. But the rest of us, it's really frustrating. But they've obviously got a job to do, and that's how they do it. Maverick, only a bit. You're very generous. Yes. Corey, thoughts on Hasty, Horn, Francis, and Hewitt to marriage, Moraes and Smith? As you want to see the 7. The hard thing is because if Hasty plays, it's just frustrating. Like if he's not the sub, and they do have a couple other options that could potentially be the sub this week. But I get it 100%. And if you've got the ability to hold Nevitt, and that's fine as well. But I'm wrapped that they could easily name Hasty as the sub again, and then doing that, it's just it just becomes more frustrated. But they do have Hall, they do have Stocker there, so they have other players that could be a late in as well, and then say maybe a box shell comes. But you look at that lineup, and Hasty's a big chance to be the sub. So if you can do that, and you've still got players on field, and the fact that it's best 22, it's obviously not going to affect you too much. Corey, that sounds fine, mate. And there's a part of me that was sort of tossing up today thinking, do I recommend people trade out Rosie if you've got him over Jason Horne-Francis? Because I do think he bounces back this week. I think it's a big game for Port. St Kilda aren't going to be any pushovers. Watching them last week, they're really good, but they've been really good the last 2 weeks on their home track. I think they're going to be really tough to beat at Marvel, maybe tough, not as tough away. So I think this is a game that Port have to come out and make a statement. If they don't, the jungle drums are going to be coming for Ken Hinkley. I know Port Adelaide, the succession plan, they're going to try their best to stick through it. But talking to a couple of Port supporters this week, they'll become a lot more vocal towards the club if things keep going wrong. So it wouldn't surprise me if I don't think it'd be a change, but a lot of heat will come. So and I'm sure Port know that. So it's a big game for them. Michael, fading Baz. It scares me a little bit, but I get it. Obviously, I faded in pre-season into the season because I knew obviously he was underdone. I was shocked about the time on ground that first game against Fremantle, and I was bullish. I made it a wrong call. I picked Fremantle that first game. I thought the heat, it was 35 degrees. Freo, all the talk about them to be the team. They've got a good record down there at Geelong. They'll come out all guns blazing, and I thought they had you kind of looked at the individual matchups, and Geelong absolutely did a number on them. Bailey Smith was unreal last week. For what I've gone back and watched some of it. Realistically, it's just the fact that he butchered the ball as much as he did, and that the weather conditions up there in Queensland were not good. It obviously dried out in the second half, which got Brisbane back in the game. But he was dominant in that game. The only thing that obviously started how much he butchered the ball. Am I expecting that sort of pressure like what Brisbane had on him last week? No. And so that's a big part of it. So, the fact that the 25 touches, the 11 tackles, he's probably not going to be doing that each week because of the conditions. So there was a big boost there that he's probably not going to get. It probably regresses down to maybe 3 or 4 tackles, but the disposal efficiency of 28%, like that's as bad as you can get. And it was 7 clear clangers in that match. So if you kind of compare it to the Freo game, where he, obviously he dominated and he was the best player on the ground. He had the 5 tackles that day, so that's the regression there. But the disposal efficiency up to that 72%. Still had some turnovers, but a lot of them were in contested situations where last week was conditions and those uncontested clangers get absolutely punished. So I just can't say the D's putting that same pressure. Like watching them the last couple of weeks, yes, surely Goodwin tries to get them up and about, but I just don't think they're any good. I was saying this it's nothing new to me. I know a few of the media have come out and been all shocked about the D's, but I'm like, all trade period last year, I was like, please, Richmond trade with Melbourne, get their pick, because I thought the Melbourne were going to be rubbish this year, and no surprise, they are absolutely rubbish. So, yeah, no surprise there. That's Stam. Do I read that right? Hey, Swizzle, can you please rank SPP, Sardis, Lindsay, and Kako as trade out options for Humphrey? I think like you could move SPP, but because of his break even, it's minus 13. So you've got to keep him for another week. That's just a no-brainer. Yeah, it was frustrating because last week he looked like he was on for 80. Then got that clash, and luckily he still played out the game, but it was only a 48, so very frustrating. So the break even means he's just got to stay in as an option. Next week he probably gets traded, but if he scores well enough, like they've got him projected at Supercoach at 46, and then he kind of balances out. But if he comes out and scores 70, 80, he's break even stays low enough that he gets another week. It becomes a week by week thing. So I think SPP stays. Sardis, he'll be right back for next week. Setterfield looked awesome in the seconds, but Parrish has had another setback. So if you held him through last week, you hold him this week. Kako and Lindsay, like Kako again, like his scoring's going to be up and down. He's a small forward. He's not barely touching it, break even of 11, but he's going to have a couple of spike games. They do play the Eagles in a couple of weeks. Dreamtime's coming up soon enough. I think there could be a big one there. So he's gone 62, 34, 62. And it's more the stats, which is interesting. So he did not kick a goal last game. He only had the 10 touches, but still managed to put a 62. So I think Kako's kind of fine to say. So I think Lindsay out of all of them is the one, just because there's no guarantees he'll come back next week. He's looked great. And I've said, if you can hold him, awesome. But yeah, he's the one, you're more worried about is I'm going to have to wait 2 weeks for him. One ends of that stretch just to 3 weeks, where the other ones, they're going to be playing next week. So, I think that's the easy way to go. Corey, how does Chera only get 6 points for 3 marks, 2 effective kicks, 1 handball, and doesn't get a tackle added to? Frustrating, I know. Chera owners, I thought he was going to get sculled just over 100 anyway. He is the definition of Carlton at the moment, because he dominates first halves. Like if you look at his halftime splits for the first 4 games they've played now, aren't they? They're 0-4, and he has looked awesome coming into halftime. Most times he's on at least 50, if not 60 odd, and then he patters out and still gets like 100. But it's like his split would be probably say 60-40 Supercoach. And the second half is where, Carlton obviously get dominated. Look good again in that that third quarter. I don't know if it's just missing. I haven't looked up the breakdowns last night if he spent more time on the pine in that third quarter. But let's have a look here. What ended up happening, because he looks so good. He's that outlet. There's a couple of times it got actually annoying because they had him and they just didn't use him, and they could use him all the time. I did say, Chera's the one that they should be using as much as possible. There weren't that many CBAs last night just because of the standard of the game. So that was a little bit frustrating because you can obviously get stuck on the bench in those situations. What did Chera play last night? I know Walsh, I did talk about his time on ground the previous week being really poor, and then had the 88% last night. Scrolling down to Chera, Chera at least went up to 78%, so there was the improvement there, which was good. But now if I try to get up the quarter by quarter, which is what we really want. So quarter, let's go Carlton, Chera. So first quarter, 94% time on ground. No surprise there. Second quarter, where are you, Chera? Dropped to 65. So this is the problem. I don't know if it's a tank or just because he gets stuck on. Third quarter, he obviously just didn't get near. He only had 1 meter gained in that third quarter, and that was probably because he was doing probably a little bit more handballing, 85%. And then what did he play in that last quarter again? I feel like I don't see him anywhere near the top. Chera, 65% again. That's I think 3 weeks in a row he's been under 70% in that last quarter. So that's the killer, because that's where game's close enough. And if you're getting effective disposals, and that was Dacos last night. Dacos, even though he only had a 20 first quarter, he is getting it when the Pies are starting to kick away the game. And because the game's tight, those points are worth like maximum points. And then Chera for us, game's on the line and he's sitting on the pine. And it's absolutely killing us. And is it a fitness thing where they just like he's got no tank about him, or is it just because they're rotating it and they've got other guys on? And but every time he's on the ground, he looks good. He's getting the ball, they're hitting him up. So very frustrating, because here's a guy like Hewitt's awesome, and I wish I'd jumped on Hewitt preseason because he's flying. But yeah, Chera could have easily been matching him if he just had the time on ground. So yeah, very frustrating. I know we've got only a few minutes left here, so I better race through these. Do we fade both Humphrey and Marriage? You can. I think Chris is. I think there's a few others out there. You can. If there's other rookies that you sort of need, no problems at all. But I feel like other people are going both. It's kind of this. People are fading because they don't know which one to go. Other people are getting both because they don't know which one's going to pop, or it's the flip of the coin. I'm going Marriage, so probably Humphrey's the one that actually goes well. I think one of them in 3 or 4 weeks' time, we talk about it probably end up going over that 400. I still think both of them go probably reasonably similar, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if one sort of clocks out at 350 and the other one gets to sort of 420. So I'm just sort of backing the guy who's actually playing defense where he gets the 3 points. So, but you can easily do that. Hey, Scotty, go Tigers. I will be at the game tomorrow. I'm pretty sure with DR and a few other people have hit me up. So I usually in these sort of games now sit City in because it's just easier to sort of meet up with people. So if you're at the game, feel free, come up, say hi, have a chat, tell me everything that's wrong with my Supercoach team and everything that's right with yours. Tyler, do we have trades torn Francis? You can hold. I think if you're going to do it, it was last week. Now you just hold. But if you need to do it to make all these trades that you want to do, I get it, but maybe there's other ways. It's just I feel like the bounce back comes. They can't be as bad as they were last week. Tristan, not a problem. Who to trade out of Hewitt or Nevitt? It's a much of a muchness. I think Hewitt, if you're probably going to choose. I know obviously he's got the forward status, so that might help you doing what you're doing. But that's come sort of a bit out of the blue there, and the fact that they've at least named Nevitt, who knows with Geelong, as I said earlier, but at least they've named him as an emergency. Probably shows that he's probably likely to come back more than what Hewitt is at the moment. So, and that's the hard thing. All these other rookies at West Coast go well. Maybe Hewitt then misses or something. They still aren't playing Bell Allen too, so they have plenty of young options. Maverick, I can't decide if I want to go Patton to Bice and bank 150K for upgrade season. Yep, or just go Hewitt to Humphrey and 45. Any advice? The upgrade season is important, and I do. I did rank obviously Humphrey higher, and Patton could easily come in. This is the hard thing. But then I look at the 150K and go, that could be really interesting. I do like Bice, but it's just, I don't even know where to go there. I kind of want to flip a coin on that. I might say Bice just because I kind of like the money. I think the money gives you more options for next week. So I'll go that. How many of these sub-injury rookies should we hold? This is where it gets hard. So that's why I've moved Nevitt to, because I'm holding Lindsay. So that's one. Camperoli is another one that's out. So I can hold two. I think that is it in my side. Oh yeah, and I'll lock, but I'm trying to move lock next week. So I've got three. So maybe I'm trying for maybe at most one on each line. And even if I can't move lock, or if I can't move, say, Camperoli going forward, it's annoying at the moment because Carlton are playing early in a round. But at least then they can potentially come loophole option. So if I scroll up for my side here, even if I can't trade sort of lock, I'm thinking either a trainer, maybe a read very soon. Like maybe even it's just 1 week, they go into the flex position, or the defender that I want to bring into the flex. But long term, for a couple of weeks there, I'd kind of want either a bias, a trainer, or read as D7 and one of them at D6, and then you keep lock maybe in a perfect world for a couple of weeks. Sort of a little bit of a thought I had, because then you can sort of loophole between them, and then you're at least getting 2 bites of the cherry for the rookie. So if I could have 5 premium defenders and then loophole between 2 of them, that's the best case. Same with, and as I said, it's annoying because Camperoli obviously played the Thursday night, but that's not the case coming up. There's obviously, there's some games where they are playing Saturdays and whatever. So whoever it is, if you can have one of these guys, midfield, it's a little bit easier because you've obviously got the extra spots. You could potentially have 2, but if you have one of these guys, that then it becomes a Maraise into somebody you have. Maybe you've got Murphy Reed or one of those other rookies there that you can sort of loophole between. So I think that's how you want to kind of set up, because that 2 bites of the cherry is such importance. And I've talked about that in the forward line as well, just trying to have that situation. So it paid off last week. Some people, it hurt because what happened was they had whoever they had on the bench, and then they didn't have Davidson on the field, and they didn't loophole, and then they got hurt by not having Davidson score. So just that sort of stuff hurts. Hey mate, who's a better hold between? Now Foss goes, it's easy. That's the easiest one. So Foss goes, and then between Nevitt and Hewitt, probably Hewitt. Not much cash gen being made about this. No, that's the hard thing. And that's why a little bit I went to Maraise as well, just because keep Rosie. I can move Rosie if it doesn't work out. And that's sort of where my cash goes, where I can sort of play around with one of these premium defenders. But it's probably hard. Like Hamling was one that I kind of liked as well, but he's going to get defender forward status, but it's frustratingly he could be out in 2 weeks. So we've got to just kind of hope that a couple of these other rookies come on. At least West Coast are playing a whole lot. Hopefully Goss gets a good run at it. HTC, what are your thoughts on going Langford over Maraise? I think Langford is a sold enough choice. The problem is just the price. So he's got to do a lot more than what Maraise does. At least I like his job security is much better playing guts, but at the same time, Melbourne do have a lot of options through there. But so I think I'd still like Maraise, because already you're saving, what's it, 67,000. So, and then he doesn't have to do as much to probably make the same amount of money. So I get it. And a couple of people have messaged me about that, but and then thoughts on going Langford over Maraise or Bice. You've said that, but no, I actually, I get it. And people have messaged me about it, but I think the cheaper option is the better option there. Hasty more like, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. But there's always a chance that there's another laid out. But he probably is. But the fact that he was last week. Sometimes clubs don't like doing it 2 weeks in a row, but that doesn't mean it won't. The captain on Bailey Smith too. I think the vice captain would have been fine, Cos, but I think the captain does become a bit of a risk. You'd rather somebody who you can back in as a safer bet. Watch him come 140 tonight, but I think like you could do it, but there is a lot of risk on it. Theo, hello. Do you think Murphy, Reed, Maraise, Curtin for Nevitt, Lindsay, and Hewitt? Thoughts? It's like Curtin actually looks good. Actually, I do like him in the way he's playing. He's bulked up. He looks fantastic. So he's a real different point of difference. Murphy Reed, he's still going to make cash. At least it's 100 in the cycle. So at least that gets your cash gen going. I don't know if I'd boost for that. I'd kind of, in a perfect world, think maybe 2 of them. Can you do, say, Nevitt and, say, Hewitt to, say, Reed and Maraise, and just leave the Curtin one? So at least that's 2 of them, and maybe save your boost for that situation. Thoughts on Simpkins looking good. I actually talked about him pre-season. Thought he looked really good in the Indigenous All-Star game. It's probably hurting Sheasel a little bit because of the role he's playing, but he is playing in there. And just the hard thing, since we've got all these other forward options, and the hard thing is Simpkin, because not potentially Petrarca, but more likely Warner. gets the forward status. And if you're already looking at like your rankings, McRae's, Bailey Smiths, some have Darcy, Jason Horn-Francis, and then all of a sudden you add a Warner. Kind of where does he fit in there? But I think he looks fine. And then, this is what Dead End was saying too. Wardlaw will come back soon. So then that does affect. So, that does make it hard. Last couple of questions because the game is about to kick off. I can't bring in Marriage or Humphreys. I'm getting Murray's. Bringing 2 premiums. Sounds awesome, Kev. And Crimson, welcome, mate. Carlton can't score because he was stuck on the bench until 10 minutes left on the clock. Same thing happened to TDK. And maybe it's the assistant coaches there. It's because one of the programs said this the other day. Carlton seemed too caught up with trying to change like for like. And it was the same case last night. Like, Chera knows he's coming on for somebody. That's the direct swap. Where it's just like other clubs will literally be going, I don't care. You're running past, get off because I'm the number one player. I'm getting you. Could you imagine Collingwood? There's no way Fly McRae would sit there and say, okay, Nick Dacos, you've got to wait for let's just say DeGoey or whoever is in that midfield to come off for you. Darcy Moore could be running past and he'd be like, get off. Nick Dacos is on the ground. So who we need to win this game, get on. So they need to fix that up. So hopefully that helps, guys. I'll catch you next week. Enjoy the weekend. If you're at the G tomorrow, shoot me a message. But outside of that, we'll talk soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.